Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Hello, dear listener. Here we are live again with you in this Health and Spirituality program every Saturday at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you're invited to join us as we are here today. And you can call to ask a question, or you can send us a text message through Kardec Radio's Facebook page. If you call, the number is 858-769-4705. And you can call us to ask questions and to be in touch with us and ask questions, especially to our guest today. Yes, we have a special guest, our dear Dr. Joe Gallenberger. He's here with us. And he's here to talk about the most important topic that is very critical nowadays. It's about suicide and the continuation. What happens next? Many people think that once a person committed suicide, that's it. They're going to be doomed to hell forever. You and I know it's not true. But you may be asking, what happens next? How is it experienced? So he wrote a book, Heaven is for Healing. He has a lot of beautiful works going on. And in this book specifically, he's going to tell us the following. His beloved brother Peter committed suicide. And Dr. Gallenberger, as a psychotherapist, met his grief with courage and open-minded curiosity. He used tools that he learned at the Monroe Institute. And from there on, you're going to listen to directly from him today here at Kardec Radio. Dr. Joe Gallenberger is a clinical psychologist with 30 years of experience. He is in demand internationally as a psychokinesis and manifestation workshop provider. He is a senior trainer at the Monroe Institute, and he created its highly successful MC2 program. He developed the home study Scene Creation, a course in manifestation, and he has taught over 80 Inner Vegas adventure workshops. His books, Inner Vegas, Creating Miracles, Abundance, and Health, and Liquid Luck, The Good Fortune Handbook, continue to receive rave reviews. And he has 7 meditation CDs on healing and abundance creation. And we're very grateful, especially because he has worked to publish this book, Healing is for Heaven, that will touch especially the hearts of everyone who nowadays has a loved one who committed suicide. You know that in the teenager groups, the rates of suicide have escalated. And you may be asking why, what to do, etc. So this is the time for us to raise awareness. You know, darkness doesn't exist. Light exists. Darkness is simply the absence of light. Evil is the absence of the good. Ignorance is the absence of knowledge and experience. So that's why we here at Kardec Radio are working day after day after day after day to be with you, sharing these teachings that are really, really helping people around the world. We have listeners now in more than 100 countries around the world, and it's just an ongoing teamwork effort with beautiful hearts, hosts, editors, lots of volunteers helping on the behind the scenes to provide to you the nourishment for your soul. You need to be nourished to be standing up and tall and strong as well. So feel free to ask your question. We have our chat at Blog Talk Radio. We have, if you want to go there, just go to kardecradio.com. You'll see the announcement of our show today. click on listen here. When you click there, you have the blog, the chat right underneath. You can chat with us live. If you want to call, 858-769-4705. We're going to kickstart with the tone that we're going to be setting for our conversation with Dr. Gallenberger. Joy. In spite of the challenges, our message today is to give you hope, to give you joy, to give you sustenance to go through and overcome the obstacles that may come during these trying times. After this message, I'll open the line to talk to Dr. Gallenberger and with you.
Joy. Joy is the song of the hours when God caresses your passage through the world. Everywhere flowers bloom as smiles of nature, and the wind combs the field's hair with resting music. The water from the fountain is liquefied care in earth's heart, and the small golden grain of sand is a message of joy from the ground. Do not allow, therefore, that your difficulty transforms itself into numbing sadness for others. Even if everything appears to conspire against the happiness that you await, lift your eyes to the smiling face of life that envelops you, and bolster joy wherever you go. Bless and serve always, even among tears. The rose, although subjugated by thorns, still offers its perfume, and sunrise awaits generously for the night to finish in order to renew itself. Daily, in a party of love and light.
You got the feeling, and this is the feeling of joy in spite of the hardships. And to give us a little more information, more understanding, more hard work as well, we have here with us Dr. Joe Gallenberger, who has written a book, Heaven is for Healing, A Soul's Journey After Suicide. He sheds new light on coping with the loss of a loved one to suicide, which is very, very important for us. And I'm not going to tell you more, because he is here with us, and we are going to open the line so he can talk to us. Thank you, Dr. Gallenberger, so much for being with us this morning at Cardiac Radio. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just got back from a week's vacation at the beautiful South Carolina beaches, and it was sunny every day, and got a little tan, Vanessa.
That's wonderful. You know, it's magical. Beaches are magical. There's a healing component to it that makes us be renewed and recharged. So we are very blessed that we got your whole self here.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Dr. Gallenberger. You know, recently we've been getting the news about increasing rates of suicide, especially amongst teenagers. And you are a psychotherapist, and you dedicated this book to those who are coping with the loss of their loved ones who committed suicide. Can you tell us more about how you got to the point of writing this book? We know your brother committed suicide. Would you like to share with us your experience?
Sure. My brother Pete was an older brother, about 8 years older, so he did a lot of the child care for me in a family of 7. And then he came about that he lived with me for a few years as an adult, so we became best friends as well. And about 25 years ago, he shot himself in Las Vegas. I was in North Carolina. I got the call and had to then call my parents, which is a tough call to do. And because of my work with Monroe Institute, They have a program called Lifeline that deals with, quote, soul rescue work, helping people transition when they get to the other side. I got in communication with him very quickly after his death, and I wrote another book called Brothers Forever a few years after his death, just talking about those early months and first year in terms of the grieving for our family, how to get through that more elegantly, if you will, and in a more enlightened way, because it's a tough road. And also my communications with him on the other side. And it started me on a path for the next 2 decades of really trying to figure out how come a person like him, who was hardworking, intelligent, honest, very motivated to find work, could not get it together financially, and things like that was contributing to his final decision to end his life. And so my last 20 years are the books you've mentioned, Liquid Luck and Inner Vegas and Abundance Courses and stuff. So on the 20th anniversary of his death, I wondered, gee, it's changed me a lot. I wonder what he's been doing over there on the other side. So Heaven is for Healing picks up the story 20 plus years later about what it's been like for him, and also in general, how is the act of suicide handled when you get to the other side. And I had some reluctance to write this book because I did not want to encourage suicide in any way. It's not a good idea. You still have to face the music, if you will, but I did want to write the book because it's crushing to think of a loved one like my mom when I called her, that her beloved son is now dead, but also that he's now going to suffer in hell for all eternity under her Catholic beliefs. And instead found that we're met with great compassion and intelligently met in ways that allow us to heal from whatever kind of death we've had. As a victim of violence, as a sudden death, as a more natural death at old age. And so I think it's pretty interesting over there what they have planned for us in ways of help, and the book is about that.
Yes, that's interesting. You're mentioning this, and we want to mention to those who are listening to us that nowadays there are many hotlines to help people who are thinking about suicide. There is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. And if you are able to access Google, you can get to specific hotlines like the teenlineonline.org, and many others. So it's very important to ask for help. Dr. Gallenberger, before we go back to your very moving story about, not only you felt it yourself, but you were concerned about the loved ones, how they would overcome the grieving, how they would cope with it, and also what happens to the loved one. But before we go back to this, I would like to ask you, people were listening to us, and I often get emails, phone calls to Cardiac Radio, people saying, oh, my loved one is contemplating suicide. And I tell them, this is serious. Don't take it lightly. Would you like, as a psychotherapist, to share with the listener the importance of really taking action when people mention, I would like to quit this life? Would you like to share, please?
Yes, I'll reinforce the number you gave, the 1-800-273-8255. I've called that number a couple times myself to test it because it's a government agency, and if you go to a Department of Motor Vehicles, you could wait for hours, right? And on the line, every time I've called, somebody picked up on the first ring and was very present, intelligently ready to help. So it's a good number to use. I agree with you when you hear that somebody is struggling. That's important. Most people keep this private. Working as a therapist for 30 years, many people that were my patients would say if I felt like suicide, I'd never tell anyone because they'd put me in a mental hospital or think I was crazy or I'd lose my job or my family would poo-poo and laugh at me, or because the person is feeling when they're considering this act usually so worthless, so world would be better off without me, that any bid for help, come in and be very present with that person and say, without judgment, I'd love to help you and I'm here to listen. That's probably the most important thing. And let the person talk without saying, oh, tomorrow will be a better day, or, if you put a smile on your face, the world will smile with you. Leave the platitudes aside and be there 100% for that person, listening to their story, their ideas, and then gently guide them, knowing that there's help and hope, and hopefully being able to offer, can I check in on you tomorrow or once a week for a while to see how you're doing. That caring, I think, is one of the most powerful things you can do, as well as leading people to more professional help if needed. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, and it's needed and that's where we may lose a loved one. When we listen to I hear people sometimes saying, even parents, their child say, I'm not feeling well, even as little kids. Like, I'm not feeling, oh, okay. They don't validate. And whether it's not about agreeing, it's not about judging, it's about validating. If the person is feeling whatever they're feeling, you're listening. Validate. Put yourself in the person's shoes. They may be going through things that you have no idea. So it's important to be a person who validates and reaches out. But of course, as Dr. Gallenberger is sharing here, there are times on the earth in which you're connected to loved ones, but they are adults, they are living elsewhere. And when you least expect, they made a decision that terminated their relationship in the physical realm with us. Of course, life goes on. So
yes, I would reinforce a couple things. About 2 weeks ago, there was a young boy, 8 years old, who committed suicide after being bullied one day at school. It's very easy to enter into denial, and you don't even think like a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old would even be thinking of an act like suicide, but is now the leading cause of death there, and I think I saw the other day the leading cause of death for people under 50. At this point. So treat things when you hear them quite seriously. And Vanessa, when I got back into this 20 years later, and I was using a channeler to contact my brother Pete as well as my own contacts, the first session we had, the compassion flowing over the phone line was such that I couldn't even sit down. I was crying. The channeler was crying at the incredible love and compassion that was being sent by the other side to people in the family who have lost a loved one, as well as to the person who has transitioned by taking their life. Their point is very strong that all death leads to light, that all experience is treasured, no one's lost for eternity, those kinds of messages. But seeing that the family even can pick up the discouragement of the person unconsciously and begin to feel pretty hopeless when they see their loved one sliding. And of course, after the act, maybe immediately get into woulda, coulda, shoulda, if we had loved them differently, if we'd paid more attention, and really torture themselves with the ifs, ands, and buts of what's happened. And I'd recommend, in the grieving, let it take as long as it needs. In our culture, we have an idea of a year, and then you take off the black and you go on. When you lose a child, when you lose somebody from suicide, many other ways, grieving may take years and years upon years to complete. The only thing you want to do is avoid getting stuck in a loop of victim or blaming Um, it's a natural part of the process to feel some of those feelings, but you want to keep moving to the place where you eventually can joyfully think of your loved one again.
Yeah, yeah, that's so right, and it's amazing how you said you contacted a medium, a psychic, to talk to your brother.
Yes, I had my own connections. Very quickly after he died, one of the first things I got was a street sign with a gavel and a line through it saying "No judgment." You know, he was so relieved not to be judged by some kind of brittle God, and I continued to have my own associations, but I'm a scientist and I wanted to cross-verify, so there was many independent verifications, people that didn't even know him coming to me with messages from him, but also a woman that I think is one of the best in the world, Pam Hogan, who is able to enter into meditative state and talk to folks who have passed very accurately. She became a good source for me for both the book and for me to communicate with my brother Pete. She's more efficient than I am, if you will, in meditation. And so we had extensive note-taking and recordings of every session and things that the book then can really hone in on what goes on. I would say, that we're talking about a huge variety here, from somebody who has 2 weeks to live in terminal cancer pain to that 8-year-old boy to people who have been in pain and for decades and just lose enough energy to continue on. And they're all treated differently over there.
Exactly. But what would you say is the major of all the dialogue that you have with him? What would you say was the most unexpected revelation that you received?
I think I'd say the most powerful, it wasn't totally unexpected, but the most powerful confirming was this knowing there is huge compassion over there and that life goes on, and a more explanation of detail of how growth happens in the world of spirit versus here. That reiteration of all death leads to life and all experience are treasured was very helpful. I was surprised to hear Pete, my brother now, after 25 years, is just about ready to think about reincarnating again. He's gone through the healing processes that we might talk a little more in detail about. And at that time, what they are saying is he has options not only for a physical life here again, reincarnation into physical body, but there are potentials for what you might call simulated lives, almost like a lucid dream, where you feel while you're in it, it's very real, but it doesn't involve adopting a physical body. The advantage of that is many people who have had a rough time here are reluctant to come back. They don't have confidence that they will be able to handle the density. And this gives them an option to work on issues without having to have a physical body. Because when we adopt a physical body, best I can tell, our issues are encoded into our very DNA. So my brother Pete seems like he's going to elect to have a few non-physical lives, as he puts it, Olympic training, for coming back again more successfully into the physical later. And that was a surprise to me.
That's interesting. And of the experiences, do you think if people were more fully aware that, life goes on, etc., they would refrain from making choices such as suicide?
I think it's always good to be more in touch with truth. And and my understanding, the truth is that we do go on to a strong spiritual life. The idea of a burning hell for all eternity may be a disincentive, but not too much when you're impulsive or drunk that night, or emotionally and mentally in such a distorted state. I think the emphasis which I put in my book is how wonderfully useful having a physical life is for learning things that you're going to have to learn eventually, and how it's really a sacred opportunity to be here. And in fact, in terms of spiritual time, we're here for a blink of an eye. So if there's any way for us to tough it out, even if things have been rough, it's considered on the other side a great victory. We're not good definers of success. Like my brother came, best I know, into this life feeling that love was not real, and left feeling love was real. And that's a great victory on a spiritual basis. My mom could do a New York Times crossword puzzle in ink. She had an amazingly sharp mind. The one thing she did not want to do was end up in a rest home. And she ended up there with Alzheimer's. And when she passed, I said, "Mom, what's up with that?" And she said, "Well, I couldn't figure another way to forget all of the guilt I was carrying from religion. So I decided to forget everything. It allowed your dad, who had been married to me for 64 years, to learn how to cook and clean, make new friends, and begin a life of his own because he had more time on the planet. And if I had just died suddenly, it would have been too much of a shock for him." And she went on a long time on how Alzheimer's was a great plan for her. But from an Earth perspective, we usually look at that and think, how grisly or stupid. Why would anybody select that? So advocating humility, even if you're considering suicide, to be humble enough to realize you don't understand your impact here. You don't fully understand why you're here. None of us do, on detail. And after my brother died, we had grocery store clerks, bank tellers, and people find us across the country to write us notes about how much he meant to them. And his perception was, the world will be better off without me. I've seen people leave 3 young children, and the relatives and things may think, how could this person be so selfish? But they're at a place where they feel so tired and they feel the world would be better off without them, but they're thinking it's distorting. So that's all I would say is, if you're contemplating this, it can change. I went through 35 years of depression myself, from about 6, 7 years old into my 30s. And now I'm so happy I stayed, because I have a life of great, great meaning and joy. But
you're helping many people.
Yeah, I had to stick it out, day by day for a while.
Yes, please do. So you say this book can help people cope, it's a way also to tell people that it's not worthwhile committing suicide, because every life really matters, though people may not perceive it as such. But there is some form of spiritual transformation that happens with people that go, they depart, and those who are left behind. Would you agree with it?
Yes. I've been getting letters from people who have been contemplating suicide a good while and read the book and say, it's so wonderful to hear a real story without platitudes, where they are inspired to continue to live. I'm getting double voice. Do you hear that too, Vanessa?
Yes, no, you're in with us.
Okay, if my voice is clear, I'll continue. I've been hearing feedback
No.
of my own voice. Okay, good. So if we move to what happened, and what happens often, they divided that into three groups. My brother was in the average Joe group, if you will. But people who commit suicide with a few weeks to live, it seems like in non-physical time, but putting in an earth concepts, it may take a day or so to just dust off and be ready to go on, see what life would have been like if they stayed, and compassionately go through the life review we tend to go through. If there is more negativity of emotions and beliefs, the person may be even put into a coma-like state, a deep rest state where the angels, if you want to use that term, can work with them on an unconscious basis and begin to remove some of the impediments to being able to be fully loving of themselves and others. That may be months in earth time to, in severe cases, hundreds of years in earth time. But eventually, as the person comes out of that, it looks like they would then, you could look at it like in a movie theater, where they get to review their life, what would have happened if they stayed, what would happen if they had different attitudes or decisions, and they're held in great compassion as they go through this review, because sometimes it can cause them to grieve a bit. Eventually, it seems like then they move into some kind of learning situation, like for my brother to learn more about the power of feminine energy and feelings, self-love, things that he needed to work on. And for the intellectual person, it might be presented almost like a biochemistry class, so the biochemistry of love, if you will. And for someone else, going through simulations, but eventually getting to a place where you feel like, okay, I understand things better now, and then beginning to look at whether there will be another life on this planet or some other place. So that's what I'm hearing usually occurs.
That's very interesting. The continuing learning. I want to mention to the listener, Dr. Gallenberger, that if they, because we have listeners in several different countries, if you want a hotline or hotlines in your country, I'll give you a website, suicide.org/international suicide hotlines. They have international suicide hotlines for all the countries possible. So please go there, suicide.org, and click on the tab International Suicide Hotlines, so you can get to know and share with loved ones as well. There are several people working on the behind the scenes to prevent it. But what would you say to a family, according to your experience, and also as a psychotherapist, and after putting together this beautiful book, what would be the first step for people to start coping in a healthy way with the suicide of a loved one? What would be the first step? Where should they go? What should they do? What would you recommend?
Well, I'll talk first about the natural reaction. Of a lot of shock, with numbness, and that's actually protective for a while. There's a tendency when we get hurt this deeply to close off our heart, try to shut down our hearts so that we can't be hurt again this way. And actually a lot of the grief is the shutting down of our heart, because that pulls us away from nature, away from spirit, away from other people, and makes everything dull, black, and blink and bleak, you know. And so, paradoxically, when you can, as soon as possible, to move into things that are open-hearted. That could be, for me, it was the beauty of nature. Again, allow other people to really come in and being specific. They may not know what to do, so they may leave you alone or just say, I'll help you any way you can, just give me a call. Be specific with them. I'd like you to bring over a pizza. I'd like you to take me to a movie. I'd like to go to a walk on with you, and I'd like you to just listen, because when this happens, people need to talk it out over and over. That's one of the first steps, is just the talking, getting physical hugs. I brought in, I guess, 2 or 3 months in, some newborn baby kittens to have some new life in the house. But, for example, a couple months after he died, I went to my first party, and I didn't last 10 minutes. All that 100 people all laughing and dancing was way too much for me. So you'll probably have this need for a very deep private time, but don't isolate. Also come out into your community and allow them to help you.
Yes, exactly. So beautiful. You talked about the needs for hugs. Yesterday at 11 p.m., we have our live Facebook session at Cardiac Radio as well, and we were talking about the importance of embracing loved ones with kindness and respect. We're coming to a moment in our society, Dr. Gallenberger, that we feel we are being refrained from the ultimate expression of our affection and of joy. And no wonder people are getting so sick, so depressed, out of deprivation of affection. Don't you think so?
We're pretty isolated now. You know, Facebook is wonderful. Blog Talk Radio is wonderful, but hugs in person. I was at the beach, as I mentioned. My 2.5-year-old granddaughter, one or two of the people at the beach were expressing some stress, and she took both her little hands on each cheek and just stared into their eyes and really connected with them. And one of the people at the beach is developmentally such that she has emotions come to surface very easily. As we were leaving, she began to cry, and the 2.5-year-old just kept kissing her and kissing her and kissing her until she smiled. Physical touch, physical contact, very helpful. I will mention what I did. I found with that hardening of the heart is I changed my image of my heart to a vast ocean of love. And it would be like if I wanted you in my life, it would be like you coming in on me and putting a hand in water. You're enveloped completely within my heart, no resistance. And then if you leave, the water goes back to complete, perhaps losing a drop. And that ocean heart image helped me then go through many death sense of my parents, my other brother, with much less bitterness in the grieving and much more connection spiritually. And so it was so powerful, I even put it on the CD as a meditation exercise called Ocean Heart. And since it's been out, people are reporting it's very sublimely transformative if you've had a deep loss or betrayal. And even handling the stresses of the current political climate and the trouble in the Middle East and all of that. As people listen to this, they feel all of that lighten, and yet rather than just ignoring it or hiding your hand in the sand, you can be present and compassionate but feel very powerful. So Ocean Heart's designed to help you do that. So that's an example of tools after that initial shock of hearing the news about a loved one that you begin to look at. And counselors, churches, meditation tools, all of those things will come handy at certain points in the process.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much. So you can get to know more information, dear listener, about it by going to heavenisforhealing.com, and there you see more about the book, about Dr. Gallenberger, and the CD he just mentioned, the Ocean Heart CD. We're going to give a short break, Dr. Gallenberger, and we'll be right back with you, okay?
Sure.
So. Each heart is like a parcel of spiritual land. Many will be buried by the stones of prejudice at the side of others who got entangled by the thorns of illusion, needing enormous time to break free. However, Think about the good land not in use. This is where elements that generate inertia are found. Abandoned lands, orphaned lands, creatures who are anxious for the fertilizer of faith, souls who beg for a modest garden of hope and comfort. These troubled, forgotten lands will often look for you. Your vision will open up through the fatigue of the parents where pain manifests, tortures, and consumes, through the disillusionment of your sad fellows who carry in their hearts the ashes of their own dreams, through the problems of the child who is consumed by revolt, through the trials of your brothers and sisters who cry smiling so that you may not see the debris of their resentment. If you can already hear the sublime sower proclaiming, "Sow, sow," you know that charity is the sun that sweeps the shadows. You bring within you the gift to sprinkle comfort. You can pronounce the blessed word. You can pour what is left from the purse, transforming the coin in a prayer of joy. You have the strong arm which lifts up the fallen. Your fingers are capable of mending the strings broken by suffering in others' hearts, attuning them to the sound of the fraternal music. You have the privilege of sharing clothes you no longer need with those less fortunate. Nothing hinders you from helping the sick. Nobody prevents you from building in the road the good for those who are here and for those who are to come. Do not deter yourself in the emptiness of the shadows. Plant truth and light, joy and goodness. If you perceive the voice of the sublime sower, you will hear him at each step of the way, confidently saying closer to your ears, "Work while you can, and sow."
Yes, dear listener, our lives are about sowing, and you can make a choice every day. No, you're not doomed to complete a destiny of sadness. No, you can work your will and together with friends, family, and professionals, sculpt the life that you want to live. I'm not saying it's easy or simple. I'm not talking about, snapping, a snap that changes everything. We're talking about effort and repetition. That's how we learn and we grow, through efforts inside of focusing on the good. And here we have with us Dr. Joe Gallenberger doing beautiful works. You can go to the website, heavenisforhealing.org, heavenisforhealing.com, and get to know more about the book, Heaven is for Healing, A Soul's Journey After Suicide, the works that Dr. Gallenberger has been doing, helping many people. He is a psychotherapist who has been helping people around the world. And when his brother Peter committed suicide, he himself experienced his own grieving, and he wanted to help his mother and others regarding it. What a soul. It's not trivial. Dr. Gallenberger, I want to mention this to you. Sometimes we take it, for granted. Like, oh, okay, it happened to you, and then you worked on it and published a book. Not everybody is able to go to that step of not only helping themselves, but also thinking of others and how you can help others. So, do you want to tell us more about, the decision of opening up about your, family story? It's such a taboo, as you say in the book. It's not simple. There is so much shame behind suicide and the families related that people don't want to talk about. And you did the reverse. You not only worked with your own grief, but you helped your family members and now the world by sharing the information in the book. Would you like to share with us about the taboo and the importance of emphasizing the importance of dealing with the feelings of shame behind it, please?
Sure. Well, I initially
was
was writing the book as a way to help myself with the grief, knowing because of all my training I might be likely to go into the head, and I knew I needed to go into the heart. So I even began to write poetry. And in my life, I believe very much intangibly using whatever experience we're having to benefit other people. And so as it looked like it could be of benefit, because if I talked as honestly and from the heart as I knew how to do, I knew it was a powerful story that could help others. And that's just a life philosophy I have. You mentioned I think it's 85 inner Vegas adventure workshops I've done now, where we practice psychokinesis to manifest the reality you would like. We started a blessing bucket in the corner of the room in those groups, just so that people around the world we never met would benefit tangibly by us being there. And over time, I think we've raised over 150,000 for charity that way. So I like to spread it, I like if you learn something that could help another, to share it. And at the same time, it's therapeutic for me as a creative writer to get it out and to put it on paper. And even that book, Brothers Forever, that's now 20 years plus old and out of print, I still get emails that are helping people. And that's so satisfying. It really makes my life happy.
Yes, it's so interesting you're talking about this movement of inner healing that you're sharing with the world. For those who are listening to us, I want to also point another resource as well. At cardiacradio.com, our website, there is a tab named Heaven and Hell, and we have audio files of spirit communication, of spirits who committed suicide and came back to tell their stories. As Dr. Gallenberger is saying, each person experiences a different thing. One thing we know, they don't go to hell. There are people who don't commit suicide. They discarnate, and they struggle in the afterlife to a greater extent. It's not the action. It's about what is within. And there is always a renewing point in the self-destructiveness, as Dr. Gallenberger's put on his book. But there is a moment here you talk about the non-physical lives. That is so interesting, because for those who are listening to us, Dr. Gallenberger, they're like, I know, Vanessa, but I would like to know more about, how I can change the difficulties that are present in my life and where the difficulties come from, etc. So can you tell us more about this non-physical life aspect of us, please?
Sure. If I understand the question, what I see going on, we are thinking about incarnating here, is that we do have some issues that we would like to work on, and a great set of counselors over there helping us plan how to have that appear in our own lives, and they may even advise us things like, I think you're being too ambitious here. Let's dial it back a little bit, but our free choice is completely respected. So I'm aware in my own self of a life where I was addicted to a woman, and when I died, I immediately leapt back in to try to find her again, and that did not go well. And I learned the difference between love and addiction, for example. So whatever issues we're playing on, other people agree to be part of the play, if you will. Again, as I mentioned earlier in the show, it's very, very difficult to judge the importance or the elegance or the rationality of the play we decide to activate while we're here. From an earth perspective, we just don't have enough information or wisdom to know what the soul is really doing in a particular life. If they, we might think, why would anybody want to be poor, or why would anybody want whatever, and so again, to have humility about that. And I think, free choice is always respected, and we can get derailed nowadays. We're having a drug problem in the United States and definitely in Western Europe as well, where people are just taking medicine for pain control. Maybe they're 40 years old, 50 years old, and they've worked their entire lives, and now they're addicted to oxycodone or something. There's choice points along that way, but we can dig ourselves quite a hole while we're here. And to understand spiritual support and psychological support's always available. To understand no matter how we play it, if we stick through, the learning we do will be very useful to us later in our spiritual journey. It's not very pleasant right now. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I want to explore one more thing, as you mentioned about humility. We've been mentioning about the importance of practicing humility, though it's quite a foreign concept in our world because we dream about it, if I may say. Not necessarily everybody dreams about being humble, but we value, in a way, like it's a virtue. But it's like such a foreign concept where to begin. So since you mentioned it, and we've been studying some of the books at Cardiac Radio, the concept of humility, would you like to explore a little more, like elaborate a little more, so the listener, I think humility can be quite empowering, right?
Yes. Now, the way I use the word humility is to understand your true nature. That's different than self-depreciation, where you feel small. But let's say on the book, Heaven is for Healing, people cut the trees for the paper. We have a publicist, we have a publisher, we have an artist for the cover, we have myself, we have 10 people that read the thing before going to press, and hundreds of others involved in the task. And so true humility, you realize we're always a team, we're always a unit, we're one with all. And within that we have great power. But it's not like we take all the credit or all the blame. A person can be egotistical, not just by saying I'm the best, but also by saying I'm the worst. And so this idea for me of humility is being in touch with our true nature as one with all and understanding we're part of a world community. And that with that there's a natural resistance to judging because somebody is on welfare or their skin color is different or their politics are different or whatever it would be. You just look at all that as different prescription glasses people are using to see God more clearly. And those glasses would not do you any good. They probably make you ill. But for them, they may be the perfect prescription so they can see clearly what they need to see. Does that make sense?
Yes. It's actually beautifully matches what we have been recommending to our listeners, to value us as divine beings, but knowing that everybody is also divine and we are progressing beings. So as we're coming to the end of our beautiful conversation, very empowering, Dr. Gallenberger, I know there are people with us who are listening through Facebook page. We get here several comments, and people want to know more about if it is a must for people who have loved ones who committed suicide. I know you mentioned it briefly, but probably because of the questions we have been receiving, we need to emphasize. Is it a must to go through a therapeutic process to cope with the suicide of a loved one?
Not necessarily. I think if assuming a good therapist or a good spiritual advisor or something like that, I think it probably always can be positive. But if a person, there's such variety of how close you were to the person and how it's affecting you. But it's one where I would have all my radar up saying, this is likely to be a big energy hit for me. It's likely for me to be causing an evaluation of the meaning of life, and it's likely to generate a lot of questions and fears and doubts. And so at least to have very, very good friends who will listen, a community of some sort to help would be good. One of the things I have over my desk is fear is expensive, love is priceless, choose wisely. And I have that there because it's so tempting to choose fear. So, say somebody close to you dies and you have a thought of what will the neighbors think. That's not where you need to be going. How can the neighbors help me with this? How can I use this to help the people around me who are also going through and knew the person? Many people have an interest in trying to contact the loved one themselves, and in the book there's tips on how to do that, and that can be very helpful to have some contact yourself so that you know they're okay, not just hope or think that they're okay. Professional, the problem also with professional can be I would avoid if they immediately want to put you on medication, except for a very mild medication for a very short period of time to get some sleep. Again, there's a variety here. My wife lost her child to a brain tumor at 6 years old when the child was 6, and tough loss as well. But I think it was good for her not to medicate. She eventually ended up at Monroe Institute that I mentioned to explore questions of meaning of life and her own consciousness and to connect with her daughter. So follow where your heart tells you to take on a journey, and don't be afraid of getting professional help, but I can't say it's absolutely necessary in every case.
Exactly. So what a beautiful help. We're very grateful to you, Dr. Gallenberger. We are grateful that you're here with us at Cardiac Radio, that you have been doing your beautiful works, and especially for publishing this book, Heaven is for Healing, A Soul's Journey After Suicide, that goes so much hand in hand with the teachings we've been studying at Cardiac Radio through Cardiac and many others. And the beautiful story. Thank you for being so loving and kind and embracing humanity as your own family. We wish you lots of blessings, Dr. Gallenberger. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, and I hope today will be very helpful to a lot of people. And you have a great weekend, huh, Vanessa?
Thank you. You too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So here you have it, dear listener. I know we could talk for hours because it's so pleasant to listen to Dr. Gallenberger, but I want to share with you that the Gospel According to Spiritism by Kardec has a lot to share with us. Chapter 5, Blessed are the Afflicted, and it goes hand in hand with what we talked about, the importance of practicing calmness and humility, knowing that life's problems, they are passing. Stay there. People need you. We all need each other. Okay, we're now going to wrap up by telling you that in a week from today, we have another beautiful program live as well. But every day at 11 p.m., we're here at Cardiac Radio, also on Facebook page, Facebook Live, talking about especially the book I Am Back. And it's about a spirit that came back to talk about his experience in the afterlife and how it is important for us to live a very loving and dignified life. So for now, we wish you lots of blessings, dear listener, and we hope to receive more of your questions and comments because we are here programmed to nourish your soul.